1 Kings chapter 21. Now Naboth the Jezreelite had a vineyard in Jezreel, beside the palace of Ahab king of Samaria. And after this Ahab said to Naboth, "Give me your vineyard, that I may have it for a vegetable garden, because it is near my house, and I will give you a better vineyard for it, or, if it seems good to you, I will give you its value in money." But Naboth said to Ahab, "The Lord forbid that I should give you the inheritance of my fathers." And Ahab went into his house, vexed and sullen, because of what Naboth the Jezreelite had said to him. For he had said, "I will not give the inheritance of my fathers." And he lay down on his bed, and turned away his face, and would eat no food. But Jezebel his wife came to him and said, "Why is your spirit so vexed that you eat no food?" And he said to her, "Because I have spoken to Naboth the Jezreelite, and said to him, 'Give me your vineyard for money, or else, if it please you, I will give you another vineyard for it.' And he answered, 'I will not give you my vineyard.' And Jezebel his wife said to him, 'Do you now govern in Israel? Arise and eat bread, and let your heart be cheerful. I will give you the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite.' So she wrote letters in Ahab's name, and sealed them with his seal. And she sent the letters to the elders and the leaders who lived with Naboth in his city. And she wrote in the letters, 'Proclaim a fast, and set Naboth at the head of the people, and set 2 worthless men opposite him, and let them bring a charge against him, saying, "You have cursed God and the king." Then take him out and stone him to death.' And the men of his city, the elders and the leaders who lived in his city, did as Jezebel had sent word to them. As it was written in the letters that she had sent to them, they proclaimed a fast, and set Naboth at the head of the people. And the 2 worthless men came in and sat opposite him. And the worthless men brought a charge against Naboth in the presence of the people, saying, "Naboth cursed God and the king." So they took him outside the city and stoned him to death with stones. Then they sent to Jezebel, saying, "Naboth has been stoned, he is dead." As soon as Jezebel heard that Naboth had been stoned and was dead, Jezebel said to Ahab, "Arise, take possession of the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite, which he refused to give you for money, for Naboth is not alive but dead." And as soon as Ahab heard that Naboth was dead, Ahab arose to go down to the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite to take possession of it. Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah the Tishbite, "Go down to meet Ahab, king of Israel, who rules in Samaria. He is now in Naboth's vineyard, where he has gone to take possession of it. Say to him, 'This is what the Lord says, have you not murdered a man and seized his property?' Then say to him, 'This is what the Lord says, in the place where dogs licked up Naboth's blood, dogs will lick up your blood, yes, yours.'" Ahab said to Elijah, "So you have found me, my enemy." "I have found you," he answered, "because you have sold yourself to do evil in the eyes of the Lord. He says, 'I am going to bring disaster on you. I will wipe out your descendants, and cut off from Ahab every last male in Israel, slave or free. I will make your house like that of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, and that of Baasha, son of Ahijah, because you have aroused my anger, and have caused Israel to sin.' And also, concerning Jezebel, the Lord says, 'Dogs will devour Jezebel by the wall of Jezreel. Dogs will eat those belonging to Ahab who die in the city, and the birds will feed on those who die in the country.' There was never anyone like Ahab, who sold himself to do evil in the eyes of the Lord, urged on by Jezebel his wife. He behaved in the vilest manner by going after idols, like the Amorites the Lord drove out before Israel. When Ahab heard these words, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and fasted. He lay in sackcloth and went around meekly. Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah the Tishbite. Have you noticed how Ahab has humbled himself before me? Because he has humbled himself, I will not bring this disaster in his day, but I will bring it on his house in the days of his son. Chapter 22. For 3 years there was no war between Aram and Israel. But in the 3rd year, Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, went down to see the king of Israel. The king of Israel had said to his officials, "Don't you know that Ramoth-Gilead belongs to us, and yet we are doing nothing to retake it from the king of Aram?" So he said to Jehoshaphat, "Will you go with me to fight against Ramoth-Gilead?" Jehoshaphat replied to the king of Israel, "I am as you are, my people as your people, my horses as your horses." But Jehoshaphat also said to the king of Israel, "First, seek the counsel of the Lord." So the king of Israel brought together the prophets, about 400 men, and asked them, "Shall I go to war against Ramoth-Gilead, or shall I refrain?" "Go," they answered, "for the Lord will give it into the king's hand." But Jehoshaphat said, "Is there no longer a prophet of the Lord here, that we may inquire of him?" And the king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, "There is still one man by whom we may inquire of the Lord, but I hate him, because he does not prophesy anything good regarding me, but only bad. He is Micaiah, the son of Imlah." But Jehoshaphat said, "May the king not say so." Then the king of Israel summoned an officer and said, "Bring Micaiah, son of Imlah, quickly." Now the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, were sitting, each on his throne, dressed in their robes, at the threshing floor at the entrance of the gate of Samaria, and all the prophets were prophesying before them. Then Zedekiah, the son of Chenaanah, made horns of iron for himself and said, "This is what the Lord says, with these you will gore the Arameans until they are destroyed." All the prophets were prophesying this as well, saying, "Go up to Ramoth-Gilead and succeed, for the Lord will hand it over to the king." Then the messenger who went to summon Micaiah spoke to him, saying, "Behold now, the words of the prophets are unanimously favorable to the king. Please, let your word be like the word of one of them, and speak favorably." But Micaiah said, "As the Lord lives, whatever the Lord says to me, so I shall speak it." When he came to the king said to him, "Micaiah, should we go to battle against Ramoth-Gilead, or should we refrain?" And he said, "Go up and succeed, for the Lord will hand it over to the king." Then the king said to him, "How many times must I make you swear that you will tell me nothing but the truth in the name of the Lord?" So he said, "I saw all Israel scattered on the mountains, like sheep that have no shepherd. And the Lord said, These people have no master. Each of them is to return to his house in peace." Then the king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, "Did I not tell you that he would not prophesy anything good regarding me, but only bad?" And Micaiah said, "Therefore hear the word of the Lord. I saw the Lord sitting on his throne, and all the angels of heaven standing by him, on his right and on his left. And the Lord said, Who will entice Ahab to go up and fall at Ramoth-Gilead?" And one spirit said this, while another said that. Then a spirit came forward and stood before the Lord and said, "I will entice him." And the Lord said to him, "How?" And he said, "I will go out and be a deceiving spirit in the mouths of all his prophets." Then he said, "You shall entice him, and you will also prevail. Go and do so." Now then, behold, the Lord has put a deceiving spirit in the mouth of all these prophets of yours, and the Lord has declared disaster against you." Then Zedekiah, the son of Chenaanah, approached and struck Micaiah on the cheek. And he said, "How did the Spirit of the Lord pass from me to speak to you?" And Micaiah said, "Behold, you are going to see how on that day, when you go from one inner room to another, trying to hide yourself." Then the king of Israel said, "Take Micaiah and return him to Amon, the governor of the city, and to Joash, the king's son, and say, 'This is what the king says: Put this man in prison, and feed him enough bread and water to survive until I return safely.'" But Micaiah said, "If you actually return safely, the Lord has not spoken by me." And he said, "Listen, all you people." So the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, went up against Ramoth-Gilead. And the king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, "I will disguise myself and go into battle, but you put on your robes." So the king of Israel disguised himself and went into battle. Now the king of Aram had commanded the 32 commanders of his chariots, saying, "Do not fight with the small or great, but only with the king of Israel." So when the commanders of the chariots saw Jehoshaphat, they said, "Surely he is the king of Israel." And they turned aside to fight against him. And Jehoshaphat cried out. Then, when the commanders of the chariots saw that it was not the king of Israel, they turned back from pursuing him. Now one man drew his bow at random and struck the king of Israel in a joint of the armor. So he said to the driver of his chariot, "Turn around and take me out of the battle, for I am severely wounded." The battle raged on that day, and the king was propped up in his chariot in front of the Arameans, and he died at evening, and the blood from the wound ran into the bottom of the chariot. Then the word passed throughout the army close to sunset, saying, "Every man to his city, and every man to his country." So the king died and was brought to Samaria, and they buried the king in Samaria. They washed out the chariot by the pool of Samaria, and the dogs licked up his blood. It was there that the prostitutes bathed themselves, in accordance with the word of the Lord which he had spoken. Now as for the rest of the acts of Ahab, and everything that he did, and the ivory house which he built, and all the cities which he built, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? So Ahab lay down with his fathers, and his son Ahaziah became king in his place. Now Jehoshaphat, the son of Asa, became king over Judah in the 4th year of Ahab, king of Israel. Jehoshaphat was 35 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 25 years in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Azubah, the daughter of Shilhi. He walked entirely in the way of his father Asa. He did not turn aside from it, doing what was right in the sight of the Lord. However, the high places were not taken away. The people still sacrificed and burned incense on the high places. Jehoshaphat also made peace with the king of Israel. The rest of the events in Jehoshaphat's reign, the extent of his power, and the wars he waged are recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Judah. He banished from the land the rest of the male and female shrine prostitutes, who still continued their practices from the days of his father Asa. There was no king in Edom at that time, only a deputy. Jehoshaphat also built a fleet of trading ships to sail to Ophir for gold, but the ships never set sail, for they met with disaster in their home port of Ezion-Geber. At one time, Ahaziah, son of Ahab, proposed to Jehoshaphat, "Let my men sail with your men in the ships." But Jehoshaphat refused the request. When Jehoshaphat died, he was buried with his ancestors in the city of David. Then his son Jehoram became the next king. Ahaziah, king of Ahab, began to rule over Israel in the 17th year of Jehoshaphat's reign in Judah. He reigned in Samaria 2 years. But he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, following the example of his father and mother, and the example of Jeroboam son of Nebat, who had led Israel to sin. He served Baal and worshipped him, provoking the anger of the Lord, the God of Israel, just as his father had done.